Policing is meant to protect communities and uphold justice. But throughout history, racism has shaped the way law enforcement operates, from the earliest days of slavery patrols in America to modern-day headlines about police brutality. Today, we'll dive deep into the history of the cases and the controversies surrounding racism in policing, and explore why the issue remains one of the most urgent civil rights challenges of our time. The history of racism in policing goes back further than many realize. In the early 1700s, long before modern police departments existed, southern states in America created what were known as slave patrols. Their job was simple but cruel: to hunt down runaway enslaved people, intimidate them into submission, and prevent uprisings. These patrols didn't exist to protect all citizens, they existed to protect the system of slavery. After slavery was abolished, these patrols didn't just disappear. Instead, they evolved into local police forces. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, police were often used to enforce Jim Crow laws, which kept Black Americans segregated and stripped of basic rights. Instead of justice, policing became a tool of racial control, ensuring that Black communities stayed marginalized and under constant surveillance. This foundation matters because it shows us that racism in policing is not just about individual officers today. It is rooted in history, built into the very structure of law enforcement from the beginning. Understanding these origins is the first step to understanding why mistrust between police and Black communities still runs so deep. In the 1950s and 60s, the civil rights movement challenged America to live up to its promise of equality. But while peaceful protesters marched for justice, many found themselves face to face with police forces determined to keep the status quo. Images from Birmingham, Alabama shocked the world: officers unleashing dogs on children, spraying protesters with high-powered fire hoses, and dragging men and women into police vans simply for demanding basic rights. Police weren't just neutral enforcers of the law, they were often the frontline defenders of segregation. They arrested freedom riders who challenged segregated buses, they harassed activists registering Black citizens to vote, and they stood guard as mobs attacked peaceful demonstrators. Instead of protecting all communities, they upheld a racist system designed to silence change. This era left a lasting scar. For many African Americans, the police came to symbolize not safety but oppression. And even decades later, those memories shape how communities view law enforcement. The Civil Rights era revealed that racism in policing wasn't just history, it was alive, visible, and violently enforced in plain sight. Decades after the Civil Rights era, racism in policing has not disappeared, it has simply changed forms. Today's statistics reveal just how unequal the system still is. Black Americans are about 3 times more likely to be killed by police than white Americans. Even when unarmed, they face a far higher risk of deadly force in police encounters. Traffic stops tell a similar story. Studies show Black drivers are pulled over more often, searched more frequently, yet are less likely to actually have contraband compared to white drivers. In cities with stop and frisk policies, Black and Latino men were disproportionately targeted, creating a cycle of fear and mistrust. It isn't only about who gets stopped or arrested, it's also about who fills America's prisons. Black Americans make up about 13% of the population, but they represent nearly 40% of the incarcerated. These numbers aren't just coincidences. They reflect patterns of racial bias built into policing and the justice system itself. Modern policing may not carry the batons and fire hoses of the past, but the unequal treatment persists. For many, the data confirms what communities of color have been saying for generations: justice is not always blind, and it is far from equal. Some of the most powerful reminders of racism in policing come from high-profile cases that shook the nation. In 1991, Rodney King, a Black motorist in Los Angeles, was brutally beaten by police officers. The attack was caught on video, one of the first times police brutality was captured so clearly. When the officers were acquitted, outrage exploded into the 1992 Los Angeles riots, exposing the deep pain and anger that had built up in black communities. Decades later, more names became rallying cries. Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, and George Floyd in Minneapolis, whose murder in 2020 was seen by millions around the world. The video of an officer kneeling on Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes sparked one of the largest protest movements in history, not just in the United States, but across the globe. These cases were not isolated incidents. They symbolized a pattern of lives cut short, of justice denied, and of communities left in grief and fury. Each tragedy forced the nation to confront a painful truth. For many black Americans, encounters with police can be a matter of life or death. And each case has fueled the ongoing demand for accountability, reform, and real justice. In the aftermath of high-profile cases and nationwide protests, the call for reform has grown louder than ever. Communities, activists, and lawmakers argue that the system must change if trust is ever to be restored. Some reforms are straightforward, banning chokeholds, requiring body cameras, and creating independent boards to investigate police misconduct. These measures aim to increase accountability and transparency, ensuring that officers are held to the same standards as the people they police. But others believe reforms need to go much deeper. They argue that real safety comes from investing in communities, in schools, mental health care, affordable housing, and social services, rather than relying on police to handle every crisis. This movement is often summed up in the phrase "defund the police," not as a call to abolish law enforcement entirely, but to reallocate resources to programs that address the root causes of crime. At the same time, police departments across the country face pressure to recruit more diverse officers, provide anti-bias training, and rebuild relationships with the neighborhoods they serve. Whether through reform, restructuring, or reimagining public safety, one message is clear: the current system is not working for everyone. Change, many say, is not optional, it is necessary. While the demand for change is strong, the debate over policing reforms is deeply divided. Supporters argue that systemic racism is undeniable, pointing to statistics, personal stories, and high-profile cases as proof that the system is broken. For them, reform is about saving lives, building trust, and ensuring that justice is applied equally. But critics see it differently. Many believe that efforts to defund the police or restrict law enforcement powers go too far, potentially making communities less safe. They argue that most officers serve with honor, and that focusing on a few high-profile cases unfairly paints all police as corrupt or racist. For them, the problem is not systemic, but a matter of a few bad individuals who need to be held accountable. This clash of perspectives has fueled heated debates across the country. Town halls, city council meetings, and even Congress have been divided over how much reform is enough or too much. On one side are those calling for bold change, and on the other those urging caution and respect for law enforcement. The controversy reveals a fundamental question: is policing a system that can be fixed from within, or does it require a complete reimagining of public safety? The legacy of racism in policing is one of pain, resistance, and resilience. From the slave patrols of the 1700s to the protests of today, black communities have carried the weight of injustice while continuing to fight for equality. Every generation has demanded change, pushing America to confront its contradictions, the promise of liberty, and the reality of inequality. Looking to the future, the question remains: what kind of policing system will we leave behind for the next generation? Some envision a future where police are trained to serve with compassion rooted in community trust rather than fear. Others imagine a society where public safety is redefined, where investment in education, healthcare, and opportunity reduces the need for policing in the first place. What is certain is that the conversation cannot be ignored. Each protest, each statistic, and each lost life has made it clear that the system as it stands is not enough. The future of policing depends on choices made today, choices about accountability, fairness, and the value of every human life. Whether America chooses reform, transformation, or something in between, the struggle for justice will remain a defining part of its story. Racism in policing is not just history, it is a reality that continues to shape lives today. From the roots of slave patrols to modern-day protests, the struggle for justice has been long and painful. But it is also a story of courage, of people who refuse to stay silent, who demand change, and who believe that equality is worth fighting for. The road ahead will not be easy, but every conversation, every reform, and every act of solidarity brings us closer to a more just system. The question we must all ask is simple: what role will we play in shaping that future? Because true justice isn't the work of a few, it's the responsibility of us all.